Stuffed shells, the quintessential holiday Italian-American meal. But don't you feel like we should make it more often? I know I do. Today, that's what we're going to make, and we're going to use that meat sauce from episode 1 of our meat sauce series. First thing I want you to do is take a block of mozzarella cheese, a 1-pound block, and grate it up. You can use the biggest attachment, almost the biggest attachment on your grater, not the huge one. You know, the 1/4-inch hole attachment. And there's Pecorino Romano cheese, and there's Parmigiano Reggiano. You can use either one you want. I'm going to go with Pecorino. I want you to take half of the mozzarella cheese, put it in a bowl, and then take the other half. You can wrap it with plastic. I just kind of wrapped it in that parchment paper, put some tape over it. And into that bowl, take 1 pound of ricotta cheese. Use any brand you like. Depending on where you live in the country, there's going to be different brands. Here in New York, Polio is predominantly the brand that's sold. Basically, most supermarkets, it's what they have, besides Whole Foods, which carries Galbani, I believe. Also take a half a cup of Pecorino Romano cheese, put it in there. And here's baby spinach. This is a 5-ounce package of it. I'm going to put it in a colander. I'm going to rinse it off. I want you to rinse it off too. You want to get any dirt, even though it says washed on the container, you still want to rinse it again. And then you can do one of two things. You can blanch it for 45 seconds, or you can throw it in the microwave for 45 seconds with plastic on top. Basically, you want to get some water out of it. So some water came out of it right now from that process right away, but we want to get even more water out of it. So I want you to take it in paper towels and squeeze it. See how I'm squeezing it and it's all coming out? So we want to take as much water out of the spinach so we don't have watery stuffed shells. And see all that, there was all that more green water, just discard that. And now that whole big container of spinach became this little tiny amount of spinach. It's amazing, right? It always happens. But this is going to be good. This will be a perfect amount for our ricotta mixture for our stuffed shells. So after you give that spinach a decent chop, take a big bunch of parsley, about a half a cup's worth. Do your best to pick through the stems, pick out the really large ones and discard them. Sometimes parsley I'll buy will have a ton of them, sometimes they'll be very small. But either way, you know, for your guests and for yourself and, you know, for anybody, it's a better experience if there's not a lot of stems in there. And then run your knife through it, give it a decent mince, about the same size chop as how you just chopped the spinach will be perfect. And then when you got both of them good, just put them off to the side. Then just clean up your cutting board, or not, but I did that so I could put the bowl on top and get all that parsley and spinach right in there. This is a good flavor for our ricotta, and we also want to add a couple eggs. The egg acts as a binder. It's a very important ingredient that I would not omit. It helps the ricotta from oozing out completely from your shells. So 2 eggs for this is a perfect amount. And just mix it all together. Try to incorporate this fairly well. You don't want to, leave a bunch of egg, sitting around. And that looks perfect. I have more mozzarella on the side, so basically it's half the block is in the ricotta mixture, and then the other half will be for the topping. We have our sauce, thing of meat sauce right there. Okay, and the shells. So using these right here, Ferrara. Company's owned by Cento. Undercook your shells by a couple minutes. It's the same thing you would do for when you're making, when we made manicotti. It's the same thing you do when you make a lasagna. You always undercook. And even whatever the box says, like till al dente, you might even want to go a minute below that, because I'm going to be baking this for 30 minutes, taking the cover off another 15 minutes. So it's going to cook a lot more. To cook these shells and prevent them from sticking, just like the lasagna, I'm going to just say a drop of oil. I normally almost always advise against it, but for something like this, you do not want them to stick. So I'm going to fish them out with a spider. I'm going to put it right on here. It works phenomenally because then they're not going to stick as long as you spread them apart. If you don't have parchment paper, use kitchen towels, clean kitchen towels, and keep your shells apart. You do not want them together. If they're together, they're going to stick. You're not going to be able to stuff it. Make sure you have plenty of water here. You want a lot of water this time. This isn't like cacio e pepe where you don't want a lot of water in your pot. You want a lot so the shells don't stick. Put 2 tablespoons of kosher salt in there and then a drop of olive oil. That's all you need. And then you get your shells in, and they're big, so You know, the big pasta tends to stick, so you want to keep stirring, and I recommend you stir for a couple minutes, maybe even the whole entire time. And it'll make this process a heck of a lot easier if you do it, and if you have an even bigger pan, it would be even better. So yeah, I was just showing that spider, and this is a really handy tool. I suggest you get one. You get a 3-pack of these on Amazon for $10. And they work great for, you know, fishing out anything, you know, that you put in water, but pasta especially. And I'm taking these shells and I'm trying to drain them well before I put them onto the parchment paper. And then really arrange them, push them apart so they don't stick. To be honest, dish towels will probably work even better here because they'll absorb some of that water. So any water that gets stuck in the shell, just turn over so you get it all out. And there's our stuffing. Our delicious ricotta stuffing. And we have to put that in a pastry bag if you have one, but I don't have a pastry bag. I mean, why would I have a pastry bag? You know, it's like, it's, you got to make do with what you have. And this plastic bag is going to work, but I got to tell you, this isn't the best plastic bag. You want the cheaper plastic bags that don't have the little groove at the end. It makes it easier to cut it, and it makes it easier to come out. But this will be all right. I'm going to stuff it up, not all the way. Make it easier for yourself. Have some room in there. Take the air out as best as you can. See, I'm kind of like laying it over and taking the air out before I close it. And then once it's out, then you can do a little spin with it. Yeah, and I'm just showing, there's the pan. I'm going to use the cast iron. It's not the best pan for this, but it'll give a nice color contrast for serving it and for the picture I'm going to take. Ideally, if you have a non-stick baking dish, that would be even better. And I'm doing 2 batches here, and the other batch will have one of those dishes. All right, so here's the end of the bag, and just take a little snip. Start with a little snip. Don't do a big snip. You could always take off more, but if you take off too much, you're going to have way too much coming out. And then you kind of just hold it, and then you squeeze it in the shell. And it really is as simple as that. Let me tell you guys, this is a heck of a lot easier than making manicotti. It really is. You know, when you're making manicotti, like, it's just like, there's a couple tricks, you know, you put in a shot glass and whatnot. And I went over all that in the video that when I made it. And I'm saying it both ways because people get mad when I say it one way or the other. So, however way you like me to say it, just think of that's the way I said it. So I'm squeezing everything into these shells. And yeah, they're a lot easier to work with. The biggest problem is if your bag bursts here, you might have to take a new bag, and I made it through this. I felt like the bag wanted to burst, but it held together. And this is a great thing to do with your kids, you know, or your wife or your husband, or you know, anybody, you know, your friends. This is a fun time. You know, everybody can get involved in the kitchen for this one. I only have 4, or actually 3 shells left. So this is a perfect amount. The stuffing, the measurements and everything is the right amount for a 12-ounce box of shells, which is kind of your standard box that you're going to find, or bag that you're going to find. So yeah, it kind of worked out, but the measurements I'm going to give you will be a general amount. So the sauce, it was about a cup of sauce on the bottom, and I would say maybe a cup on the top here. But this is why we made all that meat sauce, right? You're going to put on as much sauce as you want, or as little as you want. And then here's the other ½ pound of mozzarella cheese, which translates into about a cup and a half. And just put it all on top. This is a really, really good trick. This is probably my #1 trick I can instill in this video for you. Put parchment paper down, then your foil on top, and you won't have any sticking at all. You can also, if you don't have parchment paper, put a little bit of olive oil on top of it. See, this one didn't need it because it's a little deeper. So 400 degrees for 30 minutes. Cook your stuffed shells for 15 more minutes uncovered. They will get really bubbly, a little crispy, and just perfect. This is episode number 4 of the meat sauce series. Episode number 5 is going to be something very different. And I'm gonna show you what you could do, like kind of with like when you have a leftover meat sauce and you don't have that much. You know, sometimes you're better off just serving this, you know, for your family to do, but I'll put a little bit more on now. It'll make it look better when I take the picture.